Scream 7 has now officially hit theaters, and with that, it is time for us to go into full spoilers on this movie. So that's exactly what I'll be doing here for you guys, is giving you my full spoiler review on Scream 7, diving into the ending, the Ghostface reveal, touching upon some of the Easter eggs and things they were throwing at us, theories and possibilities for Scream 8, because although the reviews on this movie are very lackluster, it's still gonna make a ton of money, and that is enough for a studio to greenlight another one. But of course, it won't just be about my opinion. This has become a very divisive movie where some people are walking out very happy, enjoying it, thinking this is the correct way to go, while other people are like me, extremely disappointed, so let down, thinking there was so much potential in here that they didn't live up to. Where do you land on it? What could have made this movie better or worse? I'd love to hear it all down below, as well as your theories and thoughts on what they could do if they make that 8th movie. Alright, so let's just begin talking about the movie from the beginning to the end. And for the beginning of this movie, it's going to be mainly positive talking, because I still contend the first 25-30 minutes of this movie, solid. The first act, really good, and I thought to myself, man, I'm going to walk out of this actually giving it a good review, because I'm loving what they're doing. We have the opening scene that follows two strangers that have no significance or relevance to the plot. We'll get onto that in a sec. But they have rented the Stu Macher house. We last saw it in Scream 5 when it belonged to Amber's family, and the new owners were like, hey, let's just make it a stab museum and charge people to come to it. And it's kind of funny because that's exactly what the Stu Macher house is nowadays. You could rent it on Airbnb and relive some of your favorite moments from Scream. I think it's a lot more effed up in the Scream universe because real, actual people died there, and people are just walking around like, oh, there's Richie? There's Amber's footprints? Which is your favorite killer? Like, admittedly, you go to a party, you hang out with a friend, they sit down and tell you, so you more of a Jeffrey Dahmer or Charles Manson guy? Personally, John Wayne Gacy? Underrated guy. I think you're getting up and you're never talking to that friend again. But for the movie's sake of the world, their dialogue is the most meta thing about Scream 7, because it really did strip away a lot of the meta elements, and what they're saying is just echoing what a lot of fans think about the franchise. But I thought, like, the suspense and the way things were being built up, like even when the girlfriend who's like, I'm just not even into this, I thought that was a great commentary, because how many couples are out there like that? I know with my lady, she was not a horror fan when we started dating, and she hated having to sit through all the horror movies I put her through. And so I kind of found that to be a relatable meta comment, that like, just because this person is obsessed and loves these movies doesn't mean their partner does, and she was kind of sick of it and grossed out with the whole thing. But the animatronic moving around and the way it killed Jimmy Tatro, I did like that kill where the knife just went through his head and it went on the other side. I was like, oh, that's kind of sick. And I also even love the chase sequence with the girlfriend and then her falling on Ghostface's knife. Wish that wasn't given away in the trailers, along with the burning of Stu Macher's house. But honestly, that opening, really great, really solid. I'm not sure if I say it's like top 3 or whatnot, but I really liked that opening. It was such a strong start to the film. Too bad nothing about that opening has an impact on the story or Sydney. I'm already seeing fans try to cope that there was a purpose for this opening. This is the first opening of a Scream movie that you can entirely remove from the film and it will not change a beat about the story. Not only are these characters that have no relation to Sidney Prescott or any other character in this movie, it's also set in Woodsboro when the whole movie that we're watching takes place in Pine Grove. And knowing who the killers are by the end of this movie, that means that they flew from Indiana to California Woodsboro overnight, killed some random people, burnt down a house, and then took a plane straight right back. That's nearly the entire length of the US. Please, editor, put a map up to show that distance. Why? Why would you do that? I know what some people are going to say. Oh, it was to, make Sydney believe that Stu is actually out there. By Stu having burned his childhood home down? How? What? Even if the movie really wanted to sell and make you believe Stu was alive for the whole thing, how is burning down his own house a way to get at Sydney and make her get creeped out? If anything, she's clapping, she's cheering. That house was a museum to her life's trauma, built of all the memories of her dead friends, dead relatives, things that have terrorized her life, and Ghostface burned it down for her so nobody else could go visit it and pay attention to it. If I was Sydney, I'd be picking up the phone on Ghostface saying, homie, what's your cash app? Really, thank you for getting rid of that place. I hated it, man. You and me, we can be friends. It also makes no sense with the motivation of this Ghostface, because we'll talk about the motivation later, but a big part of this Ghostface's motivation is Sydney's trauma fueling and being a good thing. Well, you dumb You just burnt down the house representing her trauma, eliminating trauma that goes against your entire belief system. Opening. Awesome, great. No purpose whatsoever to the plot. It was even funny whenever, like, even Ghostface calls Sydney and tells her, I took a trip to Woodsboro and I had a heated night. And Sydney's like, oh yeah, you have fun? She's just stacking coffee. She could care less. She's like, oh, you burned something? Cool, whatever. Dude, I got coffees to make. What else you want? She didn't even care. We never even saw a moment of her looking at the news or the TV going, Stu's house burned. This means it didn't matter. But anyways, we get past that cool opening and then we move on to finally meet Sydney's family. And this is something that I thought really spoke to me as a fan because, yes, I'm happy to see Neve Campbell back. I love Sidney Prescott as a character and her story is like a huge part of these movies. So as a fan, seeing her be a mother, have a husband, parent, all of that, man, I was eating it up as a Scream fan. It's things I've been wanting to see, and it's the thing I was hoping the original Scream 5 was going to be. But instead, we got Sam and Tara, and I fell in love with those characters and where their journey was going. But as awesome as some of these moments were, this is where the movie really wanted to hammer in nostalgia callbacks and just, hey, you remember this from the movies? Because we see Isabel May, who's Sydney's daughter Tatum, just in her room, chilling, when her boyfriend sneaks through her window. And I do love that Sydney is not dumb. She knows. She's like, hey, I know you're back there, buddy. Get out of my house. Perfect, because literally Sydney went through all that. She's very cautious, even like seeing all the security system in her house. Like, all of that made sense to me, and it worked. I'm glad they didn't go cuckoo crazy the way they did with Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween 2018. She's protected and secure, but she hasn't made it her whole life. She is doing her best to make sure that overprotectiveness doesn't become too overbearing on her daughter Tatum, but it got to a point she distanced herself a little too much from that. And that's also what I found fascinating, where Tatum is like, how come we can't talk about it? How come we can't talk about when you were attacked by Ghostface? Either when you were in high school or in college or when you got older. Like, tell me about it. And Sydney's like, well, they made movies. There's documentaries. You can read it online. I'm like, Sydney, come on. You hate that. They do not tell your story accurately or from your perspective, but I get it from Sydney's standpoint because she doesn't want to relay that trauma onto her daughter and pass it on. She wants the best to shield her so she can grow up to have a normal life. All of that stuff was working for me. And again, I like Isabel May in this as Tatum. I wasn't digging her when she got announced or they were showing her in the trailers and posters. I'm like, man, you have giant shoes to fill in as the daughter of Sidney Prescott. And to me, the movie earned her. I have actually seen some reactions now from some people that thought Isabel May was actually a weak part of the movie, that they thought she could have been better. I disagree, and I'd be happy to follow her again. To me, again, Sydney and Tatum are the highlight of the entire movie. And continue on with the family life, it's even interesting that they did bring back the two younger daughters, because I do remember in Scream 5, Sydney mentioned she had multiple daughters. She was like,
I'm just trying to get a run-in before I take the girls to school.
Meaning there's more than one, and we just see they're off with their grandparents in Colorado. So, I mean, there's potential with story there and have those kids grow up if they want. But pretty obvious, being how young they are, they just had them sidelined for the story. I'm not mad about that. Makes sense. I'm just glad they didn't ignore that Sydney has basically, I think, 3 kids. Joel McHale also, I mentioned, he surprised me. I'm not saying he was amazing or a standout or I loved him over Mark Kincaid. Still would have liked it if it was Mark Kincaid from Scream 3. But as someone who laughed so hard when they announced Joel McHale as the husband, I thought he actually did a fine enough job. He wasn't overly comedic, he had decent chemistry with Neve Campbell, and he put up a decent fight with Ghostface when he could, and I'll be honest, I was even happy that he didn't end up dying by the end of the movie, because I still love my Sidney Prescott. I don't want her to have a traumatic, sad life, and her losing a husband would have just sucked from a fan perspective, so I'm glad he made it out. But okay, that's where we move on to then meet Tatum's friend group, and man, I just wish I liked them more. They were given nothing. McKenna Grace, my goodness, you have an awesome rising star, or is a big star like McKenna Grace, and I guess the movie could only afford her for 2 or 3 days on set, because as quickly as McKenna Grace appears, she quickly dies. She has, I think, more screen time in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and her screen time in that movie was already very low. Now, her kill scene is in a theater where she's being hung around and Ghostface is slicing her. I thought the way it was set up was a decent, horrifying kill, because just the thought of you hanging there, not being able to run away, and just swinging as Ghostface is slicing you, pretty eerie and effective, but I think they take it, I don't want to say a step too far, but once it becomes the shot where they cut her all the way open and guts come out, it was just done with bad CGI, and it didn't feel like Scream. If you've watched my channel for a long time, you know I love blood and guts. I love seeing all that nasty, terrifier, sick stuff happen. But admittedly, when it comes to the Scream franchise, it's never been about that. It's never been about being super gore, super bloody, super violent. Not saying you can't do that, you can, but I think the things that have always made the kills that Ghostface does in a Scream movie horrifying is the attachment you form with those characters, the chase sequence and suspense leading to that knife eventually ending up in you that actually makes it impactful. The death of Randy in Scream 2, it's not very gory or violent. If anything, it's happening off camera just through the side mirror of a window. But man, as a kid, when I saw that, I felt every stab, every pain, and the look of Randy's face when they opened that van, it hurt. And that's because of my attachment to the character. Doing this, it just feels like shock value without much weight. It could have been Scream trying to, update itself and going, well, movies like Terrifier and things like that are very popular, so now Ghostface has to be just as bloody as violent. But the movie never makes that meta commentary. It's also during this theater sequence I want to talk about the theater teacher, and my God, what an a-hole. The guy was making me laugh when he was like, Tatum, you're Sydney's daughter. You should have, more confidence. I'm like, dude, what a line you are crossing. But again, I thought that was some of the stuff that I liked and wanted to explore more. Tatum is living a life where everyone around her knows her mom's story, knows how famous she is, and they can just blatantly say things like that at any point. No wonder Tatum has this kind of shadow she's living under with her mother, and I thought the theater teacher was a good example of that. Even a good red herring, because the guy looked creepy and was like always watching Sydney. But okay, this happens, and then eventually they run home and they're like, pack your bags, we gotta go to a safe zone because a Ghostface attack is happening. I even like that Sydney was mad at Tatum because she's like, where's your go bag? And Tatum's like, I unpacked that a long time ago. I'm almost 18 and we have not had one Ghostface attack as long as I've been alive, Mom. I think you're exaggerating. And that small detail of Sydney being mad, it's like, what do you mean you unpacked your to-go bag? It's like, girl, you need that bag. It's little steps like that that I liked. And I did think it was crazy, though, that Sydney didn't even tell her daughter that she had a panic room built in the house. But to me, again, that went to the commentary of Sydney trying to shield her daughter, and she protected her too much. She left her unprepared for when a Ghostface actually attacks. Those elements of Scream 7 I like. But man, this Ghostface was actually ruthless. He was hiding in the attic, came down, and I thought that entire moment was some of the stronger points of Scream 7. Definitely some logical issues, because man, the town of Pine Grove apparently has a cop population of 1, and that's Sydney's husband. Because what do you mean? The cops were literally right outside Sydney's house, and while Ghostface is chasing them all around, not one of them come into the house to help after hearing gunshots and all this crazy stuff. Like, what? That was a big pet peeve of this, is the cops never arrive on time. In fact, they almost never show up. And it's extra frustrating because the Ghostface makes it a point to call Sydney or whoever and give them a head start to where they're gonna be. Ghostface will literally call up Sydney and tell her, hey, I'm gonna be at the school. We have a 15-minute window, just letting you know. Hey, I'm at the coffee shop. You have a 5-minute window now. Hey, I'm at this place. I'm like, bro, slowest cops in the world. But it was an effective scene. Trying to see them, leave the panic room, although I felt like that wasn't truly necessary. No way Ghostface was going to get through that steel door, but he can get through a plastered wall with a knife. But an effective, horrifying moment. And this battle between Ghostface and them goes on for such a long time that I actually love the way it ended, because as they run outside and they're still fighting off Ghostface, he ends up in the middle of the street, and wouldn't you know, car comes in, hits Ghostface, runs him over, kills him, and out comes Gail Weathers with Mindy and Chad. I clap. I clapped during that moment. That was such a great entrance for Gail Weathers. My audience was loving it. I'm hearing a lot of other people's audiences also clapped and cheered during that. What a cool entrance. An even cooler thing, and probably the only new thing that this movie does, unmasking a ghost face in the middle of a movie. And not only just that, actually killing a ghost face in the middle of the movie. That's refreshing. That feels different. That gives me a little bit of taste of something new other than this formula we keep following. I just feel like after the reveal and them not even realizing who this guy is, what's going on, and then having to Scooby-Doo their way into finding out more, the movie loses a lot of that momentum, and something interesting and new that you just did ends up feeling like an afterthought. Still a cool idea, and I did like that they did that. I just felt like as cool as it was, it quickly then just becomes stale because they go back to the formula.
Back to formula.
So I think at this point then it's best to kind of talk about the Matthew Lillard and the AI involvement in this movie, because pretty early on, and this to me is when the movie immediately took a nosedive, the first time Sydney takes a call from Ghostface and FaceTimes him, and it's Matthew Lillard right there in the flesh, and we get this awful zoom in dolly shot. One of the worst zoom in dolly shots I've ever seen. I'm sorry. I talked about that already. Kevin Williamson, I am happy with the things you added in fleshing out the relationship between Sydney and her daughter Tatum. This even having more of a feel of like the first 4 Scream movies, but I really do think we need a different director. There's just times this movie felt so cheaply shot, and a lot of the great kills were not executed in a way to their full potential. And I think the FaceTime calls with Matthew Lillard, Stu, are a perfect example of how ugly this movie looked. Because come on, guys. Every time Matthew Lillard was FaceTiming and talking, that's something out of a Netflix show with a budget of $50, man. That looked horrible, awful. It's like Matthew Lillard didn't even have to go to set. He literally probably just went outside to the middle of his street, started recording and going, "Hey, Sydney, it's me, Crazy Stu. I always had a thing for you." The cringe, the secondhand embarrassment every time we're on a FaceTime call, seeing this Stu with the scars and all that. It was like fan fiction, the movie, man. It was just bad, guys. Like, come on. This AI angle was so horrible, and I'm not against them doing this. Some people think we are mad just because they're using AI. No, you can use it, and if anything, it's an upgraded step up from Scream 3, where they had that voice changer, and it's so funny at the time Scream 3 came out how that voice changer was looked at unrealistic technology, and that technology exists. Someone can copy my voice, and there's a lot of scams going on of people copying voices and even faces. There's plenty of TikToks I see where this technology that the movie uses of AI turning into somebody looks extremely eerily realistic. The technology is here, so it makes sense to use it. What Scream 7 fails at doing is having any commentary with that, is having any sort of exploration. Just using AI is not commentating on AI. Just having AI as part of your movie does not mean you're bringing something new to the table. Nowhere in this movie does it try exploring the harm of it or why it's not good. And that's such a big disappointment, because even hearing Kevin Williamson, the creator of the franchise, mention how 7 is moving away from the meta commentary stuff, what are we doing? This whole franchise is built on meta commentary, is finding clever ways to poke at the horror genre, and the way it's evolved over the years, eliminating that element is eliminating a big charm of Scream. And I just don't know how anyone genuinely thought Matthew Lillard Stu was alive, because even Sydney and Gail the whole time are like, it's probably AI. It's probably AI. They make it so obvious just saying it's AI, it's deepfake, that I'm like, okay, they believe so hard it's AI and deepfake. Maybe Stu actually is alive with how obvious they are not believing it. So this killer's whole thing isn't even working on Sydney. Her thinking that Stu is alive and possibly out there, she the whole time is like, it's AI, it's deepfake. He's not really out there. I'm like, this Ghostface is failing at his own trickery. And I think it made even who one of the Ghostfaces are so obvious, because when they finally go to that psychiatric hospital and they meet one of the most open workers there, where he's like, hey, I'm not really supposed to, but screw it, come over here. This is the guy's room. Look at everything around, and oh, that guy? Yeah, let me tell you all his information and just go against HIPAA violations. Let me even take you to his room that is completely empty. That guy was literally being like, I'm giving you the false backstory that the movie needs to trick you. And shame on Gail Weathers, the great reporter, for not even double checking his story. If what this guy is saying is true, talk to the psychiatric ward, get his records, get his files. Didn't even do that. Just took this guy's word for it and was like, yeah, that's probably it. So bad. But okay, before we get to the killer's reveal and explaining the motivations, because there's a lot of people online that are extremely confused by this Ghostface's motivation, and I will break it down for you. Let me just talk about a few more things, like Chad and Mindy. They weren't exactly needed in this, and while maybe that's true, I felt they did find an organic way to throw them in there. Gail has now been fired from her talk show job, which pretty interesting. You would think she'd be a hot commodity after going through another Ghostface attack and nearly dying, which they do reference the events of New York a lot, and the movie even ends with Sydney agreeing she should have been in New York. She should have been there, meaning like hey, she should have been part of Scream 6. If only Spyglass wasn't cheap and actually paid her what she was worth, instead of doing it for Scream 7 where they're just desperate. But Chad and Mindy, they work for me. I like seeing their dynamic. They easily got along with Isabel May, and I was even watching them hang out together and going like, dude, how cool would it be to have Sydney's daughter, Tatum, and the core four get together to go fight off a Ghostface? I would love to see that movie. I did find it weird that the twins never had a scene with Sydney. It was like kids of a divorced family where not allowed to talk to each other, okay? That's your daddy's new wife. Don't talk to her kids. It made it even weirder because they were staying in Sydney's house but never had scenes with Sydney. Gail, I mentioned also, is just completely wasted in this movie. They attempt to do something I was open and excited for because I'm sorry, I think these last three movies have ruined Gail Weathers' arc. In Scream 5, they were leading up to something of her learning her ways, being more compassionate, not putting her reporter side first, and being a humane person, listening to Cindy, a friend for her, and she was gonna write a book about the life of Dewey. And then in Scream 6, she abandoned all that, went right back to her ways, and even in the interview with Sydney, she immediately goes to throwing her friend under the bus and asking her pressing questions that Sydney doesn't like. Some of you could argue, yeah, but that's just the Gail Weathers. That's the girl, the reporter. She's not gonna go soft. I'm like, then she has no arc. She hasn't learned anything. And unfortunately, she needs to die at this point. I'm so sorry to say that because I love Courtney Cox and Gail Weathers, but she is a huge cause of all these things going on. Her books are the reason Sydney's life have been turned into movies because all the stab films are based on the Gail Weather books. When she shows up in a Ghostface attack, is she really showing up to support and be there for Sydney or to be first on the scene and get the scoop so she can write that next book? She never wrote that book for Dewey's life, and she was upset when Sydney was getting mad over these pressing questions and then throws all this stuff about, yeah, but you know, I'm hurt too, and she's taking antidepressant pills. I really feel like they are regressing with Gail's arc. And the only way to redeem her character now or fulfill her arc by her making a noble sacrifice or finally taking a Ghostface knife to save Sydney because everything she's done has only been to harm Sydney's life. But either way, they're at the news station and Ghostface is gonna go after Tatum, gives that warning call saying, hey, I'm gonna be at this place, so call the police and have them ready there. And Sydney runs down, goes to Gail's car, and she's like, I am in kind of walking distance. It looks like a 30-minute run though. And Sydney in that moment goes, I could take a 30-minute run to the coffee shop or a 2-minute run back upstairs, grab Gail's keys, and then get to my coffee shop in like 5 minutes. Nah, let me just run. And Gail that whole time, I'm assuming this was just her up in the station. I just took my antidepressant. I'm not allowed to drive now. Really hope Sydney's catching that killer. No point Gail ever shows up again till the ending of the movie. What the heck? Gail just disappears. Has the car keys, has the car, but decides, I'm chilling at the news station because I got to put together this nice report since I finally got that Sydney interview. Awful. That was the beginning of Act 3, and it was nosediving bad. And so back at the tavern, you have all the kids hanging out there, and Ghostface is attacking. Purposely lets Chad and Mindy survive and pass that on the ground, okay. But they kill the rest of Tatum's friend group, with the most brutal kill at the tavern being Lucas, who gets his head shoved onto a beer tap. Pretty gnarly, not gonna lie. For the first half of that kill, I was like, oh, this is sick. This is nasty. But then once it zoomed in more and it got CGI and you saw the prosthetic and even the beer was coming out of the guy's mouth, that was cartoonish and silly. I'm sorry. That kind of took me out of it and ruined the kill for me. Some people are saying that's the best kill of the movie. I'll give it to you. But to me, I was just kind of like, this looks silly and does not feel like Scream at all. And that kill makes less sense once you find out who the Ghostface is. But again, we'll talk about that. We have the great scene of Tatum who's shooting Ghostface through the wall and Sydney's helping her through the webcams. I liked all that, but ultimately Tatum gets caught, is sent back to the house. Sydney shows up, and here we have the Ghostface reveal. Okay, the worst reveal in the entire freaking franchise, man. So first Ghostface gets unmasked, and it is the guy who works at the psych ward that was feeding that obvious BS story of Matthew Lillard Stu being alive, and he has the poorly written line of, I used to be a Google employee working in AI, so, you know, that's what I do, girl. okay? Really trying to egg on the audience that, like, Stu is the ghost face behind him, and lo and behold, it's Ann Camp, the neighbor of Sidney Prescott, or Sidney Evans, and she starts monologuing and going crazy about why she did all of this. Okay, get ready for this, because here's the motivation. The reason Jessica, Ann Camp's character, was Ghostface is because a long time ago, she had an abusive husband, was so depressed, was in her shell, but she picked up Sidney Prescott's book, Out of Darkness, the book she wrote and was promoting in Scream 4. It's a book that finally told Sidney's side of the story of everything that happened with the stab movies in her life, and it was in a kind of way a self-help book for her. She used that book then as the motivation and the courage to be able to kill her abusive husband and get away with it, and she did. So she was happy and living good and having a nice life, but the problem? Sidney wanted to have a personal life. Sidney didn't want to write another book, didn't want more movies about her life, no interviews, just calm, privately live in her own home and stay away from everything, including the events of New York. And that pissed off Jessica to where she said, no, Sidney, you're the star. You're supposed to have this trauma because it helps me go through my trauma. So let me then pass on your trauma to your daughter to carry on this legacy. If I don't slap you around your freaking head, who thought of that? Who thought that was good? And I feel so sorry for the Scream fans that had hope that Stu Macher was alive, because I was one of them for the longest, and it did feel like in 5 and 6 there were teases trying to set you up, and fans were building theories. Is Stu alive? Is he out there? Genuinely, sure, it would have been bad fan fiction, a weird retcon in the kind of grounded universe of Scream, but I think in the end, if you actually had Stu Macher alive and he showed up at the end of this, instantly would have made this movie so much more better. It would have been to the point where it's like, it's flawed, it's not great, but I totally get why fans love it. Stu's back, he's there in the flesh against Sidney. And that's how bad this reveal is, when the fan fiction online is a better thing to do than what you deliver. There is no way you can defend this and not say it isn't the worst motivation. I already see people go, nah, the reveal in 6 was still bad. But that reveal is simple and too safe. That's why I hated it. Just a family wanting revenge. That motivation is understandable. It's just safe and boring, but also it had the nice directing talent of Radio Silence, and everything in that final act looks gorgeous. Nice cinematography, great moments, amazing looking shots, and Scream felt cinematic. This one, unfortunately, directed by Kevin Williamson, in a garage in Sydney's backyard, looking like something straight out of an episode of a CW show? Oh, dude, no. I already seen some people defending, going, Chris, it's no different than the motivation of Scream 5. Scream 5 has aged gracefully and beautifully in the era of the Scream fandom going toxic. That motivation was fans of the Stab movie who were so obsessed with the movie that they wanted to make their own Stab film and even kill Sidney Prescott because they were just tired of her and it was time for the franchise to move on and live on. That motivation has aged so well because look at the toxicity and the fandom going on right now. People so obsessed with these movies, they're throwing around death threats, fighting with people online. Figuratively, there are now hundreds to thousands Richie Kirsches online every day with how divided this fandom has become. The motivation and ending of Scream 5 has only gotten better. This one, it's making fun of you Scream 7 defenders. Do you not realize that? I'm seeing so many people laugh at the moment in this movie where Matthew Lillard Stu makes fun of the Melissa Barrera situation where Gail is like, I wasn't fired, my contract ended. And that's the big thing people will tell you. Melissa Barrera couldn't have been fired because her contract ended, so yeah. Well, the ending of Scream 7 is literally making fun of you Scream 7 fans who have been begging and were happy when they got rid of Melissa Barrera and brought back Sidney Prescott because she's the hero of your story. She's the one that needs to continue on, and that's how obsessed you've become. That's the commentary and motivation. It's a reflection of the way the fandom has become obsessed with Sidney Prescott and holds her to this pedestal that only she can be the leader and the teller, and her story must go on. She's not allowed to rest. She's not allowed to get her happy ending. And what do they do to that ghost face and those fans who believe all that? They shot her in the frickin' face 27 times to where her face fell off. This movie is making fun of you! And some of y'all are eating it up going, yeah, This was smart. But even putting aside that commentary, looking at it in the context of the film, knowing that this Ghostface also in the middle of the movie randomly decided to kill their own son. That bar scene where he puts his head on the bar tap and all that, probably one of the most gory, grotesque scenes. Everybody else kind of just got away with some slashes and quick cuts. That was personal, that was dark, and knowing that it was his own mother, that is just shock value for the sake of shock value and doesn't even make sense within its own story. Her motive is that she just needs Sydney. I get why she killed her husband and how she could mistakenly take that from Sydney's books, because what has Sydney done to all her attackers that have come after her? Sydney kills them. So she misinterpreted that information in her books and was like, I need to kill my abuser. But your poor little son, whose biggest flaw is just annoyingly liking true crime stuff. He's obsessed with like true crime documentaries and the stab movies. And you're looking at him the whole movie like, he's disgusting. He's sick. How can he like that stuff? Let me go plan a whole murder spree. He's just as crazy as you without probably actually wanting to kill people. And you gave him one of the craziest deaths just because he was too much like his dad. That isn't Kevin Williamson. That is the plague that has been these writers for Scream 5, 6, and 7. Because, again, 5, 6, and 7 are not perfect. They are way better movies than 7 is. I'll give you that. But I don't think they know how to handle actually setting up a mystery, giving logical reasoning behind what the killers want to do, and instead are just trying to trick the audience, and these characters are on a theater stage for our entertainment. They don't make sense within the world they live in. It's the same stuff that pissed me off in like Scream 6, where they fake the death of one of the ghost faces, where that doesn't make sense within the world of how they were going to get away with it, but it was a good way to trick the audience. No one expects the person who died in the middle of the movie, right? Well, you're not going to suspect the mom is the killer if, you know, she kills her own son. It's so dumb. And so with that reveal and everything going on there with the ghost faces, it's such an underwhelming ending. It made the movie come off feeling so generic, so ununique, and Scream is now becoming the thing they used to make fun of. This is becoming now just stab movies. And look, trust me, I said it. They make Scream 8, I'm gonna be there day one. Scream 9, I will be there day one. But I need this franchise to go back to its roots in analyzing and dissecting horror movies. I get that sometimes the Mindy character didn't do it in the most subtle way. I do agree with you guys there. And that's why I think some people are finding her more enjoyable in Scream 7, because right when she's about to go into her whole rants and the rules and get a little too meta, Chad and other characters are like, oh, okay, quiet down. Let's stop all that. There is a more clever, a more subtle way to get across that meta commentary that isn't literally stopping the movie in its tracks to be like, well, an A24 movie needs to be more art house than this. That's not what I'm saying I want out of these movies, but they can be a lot more clever than this. And if you just want this to become soap opera, following the characters for the sake of following them, I don't think that's a good route for this franchise, and it's only going to get worse from here. I genuinely don't have any theories or thoughts. My wish would be to somehow have a big story that actually makes sense, that maybe could involve the core four, Sydney Prescott, Tatum the daughter in there as well. We never even got to meet the mother of the Carpenters, and I feel like that's a great antagonist waiting to happen, but I don't think we'll ever get that. I know for sure we need to put the Stu Macher, Billy Loomis, all that stuff way behind us. None of these movies should be really referencing or paying nostalgia to the original movies. We gotta move forward and create something new. And I think Kevin Williamson knew that, because again, you see the interviews where he said the original plan for Scream 5 was to have it be Jill, and that somebody knew that she was Ghostface in Scream 4, and they're gonna expose her secret, and it would have been awesome because it's basically Ghostface versus Ghostface. I'm so sad that movie never happened. And then his original plan for Scream 6 was to have Gail be the lead. Kevin Williamson understood you can't always have the movies focus on Sydney. It becomes too repetitive, too formulaic, and the franchise can't grow. So again, if they bring back Sydney for Scream 8, I'll give it a shot, but I hope they actually have something more unique and refreshing than whatever this was at the end, man, because that was just so embarrassing. Again, that's just my opinion on Scream 7. I'd like to hear from you guys what you like, what you didn't like. Also, if you disagree with me, I welcome it. As long as you're civil and not rude, I'm happy to hear a differing opinion. I would love for the community to go back to being civil. That way I can just be hyped for when another Scream movie comes out, and hopefully it'll be better than this one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.